Warning, this video covers only the single player campaign of Titanfall 2. There may be spoilers. Titanfall was one of my favorite games of 2014, so when I heard they're making a sequel, I was super pumped. However, I was totally unprepared for this single player campaign announcement. Titanfall 1 had a weird single player which played out during online matches with other players. I personally liked it, but it lacked the punch, the impact, you know? And a lot of people felt the same way, so it shouldn't be a surprise that the sequel features a regular full campaign, separate from the online multiplayer. Titanfall 2's single player might be a very strong contender against this year's Doom. They're both fantastic games, but I think Titanfall 2 stole my heart. Or to be precise, BT stole my heart. In Titanfall 2 you play as Jack Cooper, and if that name sounds generic to you, that's because it is. He's a resistance fighter and that's about it. The only real backstory you ever get about him is the fact that he fought in the Battle of Demeter from the first game, but due to amnesia doesn't recall anything. While it is true you could write off Cooper as a bad written character, it actually makes a lot of sense. It's easy to slip into his shoes and identify his character in-game with yourself, because he's not the main focus of the story. After a brief tutorial, you crash land on Typhon as your mission goes horribly wrong, you almost die, but your friend from the tutorial, Captain Lastimosa, saves your ass, but dies in the fight. He gets about as much screen time as Mufasa in Lion King. With his dying breath, he makes you the pilot of his Vanguard-class Titan, BT-7242, and from there on, the two of you go on an epic mission to save the world and become best friends. BT is a very well-written character. A lot of the humor comes out from the fact that he's a robot. A lot of his understanding comes from hard-coded calculations. During one scene when he's about to throw you in the air, he simply starts reciting all of the horrible things that can happen since there's 32% chance of failure, while Jack is literally scared shitless. If you ever played Portal, he kinda reminds me of GLaDOS, except that he's not evil. In the beginning, for BT, you're just a pilot necessary to complete his mission, disposable. But as time goes on, he starts to recognize you as his pilot and his partner, and you explore the world of a friendship between a robot and pilot. The game is divided into different chapters, with almost every one of them having some sort of gimmick, which I found to be really entertaining. There's a whole level where you run around a factory that makes houses and ride on the assembly line, trying not to die by getting crushed or falling off. There's a whole level where you have to jump in between time zone anomalies or use a special power tool to manipulate your environment. It's a very cool way of adding variety to the gameplay. During some levels you're alone, sometimes you're in the Titan, but most of the time it's a mix. Parts of the levels can be played inside of the Titan and are recommended, but sometimes you've got to help out your big friend. You can freely get in and out of your Titan, he'll follow you around like they did in Titanfall 1. However, you have to be careful with that, because if you get ambushed by another Titan or Titans, as a pilot, you're very, very squishy. Like one-shot squishy for a Titan. The game has regenerating health, but the developers didn't screw around. You cannot take a lot of damage, and it can be quite challenging even on normal difficulty. This absolutely does not mean that you'll be hiding in cover for the most of the game, but you'll have to think twice before you rush blindly into the enemy. Thankfully, the checkpoints are very often and retrying is really fast, so there's a constant flow. You also have to watch out for your Titan, as it is not invincible even when you step out of it. The Titan recharges only his temporary shield, but in order to replenish his health you need to pick up green energy cores while lying around the levels or collect them from fallen Titans. In the previous title, you could load out your Titan with a choice of different weapons, cores and skills, but in the single player of Titanfall 2, the skills and the core of your Titan depend on your currently selected weapon. You can change them freely, but you cannot customize what skills they come with. I understand why they did this was probably due to balancing issues, but to be honest, it's not that bad. There's a few new weapons, and I especially love the giant red laser beam which you can unleash upon enemies. And of course, boss fights are a thing! Every few levels you fight against one of the mercenaries that were hired by the IMC to sabotage your mission. These guys get their own little introduction and then the two of you fight Titan on Titan. I loved the boss fights in Titanfall 2. They were a lot harder than your average Titan during a level and required a lot of skill and patience to beat. Each one has its own Titan, so the tactics and the attack patterns differ a lot, so remember to switch tactics for each one of them. Of course, the freedom of movement is what makes Titanfall 2's campaign so great. There's not a lot limiting your movement. For a moment I feared it would be an on-rails rollercoaster like the Battlefield single-player campaign, the Battlefield 4 I mean, or Call of Duty titles, where moving a centimeter of the designed path is prohibited. But no, nothing is holding you down, and that's why I loved playing it, the way I want it. Just like Doom, it's a breath of fresh air when you can actually walk off the path and just enjoy yourself. The levels themselves look absolutely gorgeous, full of detail, lush foliage, and they're surprisingly spacious. They also contain a few secrets. Each level has a number of pilot helmets on them. While they're not exactly hard to find as they emit a blue shine, it's a bit tricky to get some of them, and I can certainly appreciate that. However, they're totally pointless as they don't really unlock anything and are only there for an achievement. A missed opportunity to say the least. The game doesn't really hold you by the hand. Objective markers mostly show up when you press the tab button, but for the most part the level layouts are pretty straightforward and intuitive, so you know where to go. In a few more tricky scenarios you receive a ghost that can show you the way, but you can safely ignore it and just try to figure it out yourself. Graphically, the game is very polished. It's still the Source engine, but it doesn't look outdated at all. High-resolution textures, amazing lighting, detailed models and stable performance are things you can expect. Just don't expect 60 FPS on older machines like mine. I still rock my old GTX 770 and the game averaged around 40 FPS on maximum details, which is fine, but I understand some people would love that silky smooth 60. It should run fine for folks with a 970 or anything newer, to be honest. The campaign lasts about 5 hours on normal difficulty, which doesn't seem too long, but I've personally enjoyed all of it. It never felt like I'm slogging through a section, never noticed any padding to artificially lengthen the playtime. If you're looking for an FPS with good gameplay and well-written characters, you might be interested in Titanfall 2. Overall, I enjoyed playing the campaign. And if there's anything to complain about, it's one thing that's totally subjective. I didn't play it in English. For no reason, copies of the game in Poland have only Polish or Russian audio options. They're not terrible dubs, but I just prefer my games in English, you know? It also looked weird when people were talking to me as the lip sync is non-existent and some characters still move their mouth while the audio cuts off.
Nie strzelać, jest z SRS! Spójrzcie na hełm!
Nasz oddział nieźle dostał.
Some people might ask if it's better than this year's Doom, and I would say that they're both equally good games, but for different reasons. Doom focuses on the gameplay and not so much on the story, while Titanfall 2 focuses on the story and less on gameplay. In my eyes, they're both worth the price.